Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter at the Oregon State Capitol. Governor Brown has been racking up the airline miles this year. She's already been to Washington, D.C. 3 times since President Trump took office. I asked her about her interactions with the Trump administration. Governor, welcome back to Straight Talk.
Thank you.
You wrote an op-ed piece this week as you reflected on the 4th of July, and you said the nation's early vision of equity and opportunity for all is threatened, especially by the Republican health care legislation. You said, quote, an attitude of entitlement and exclusion hangs like a smog over the nation's capital. A lack of leadership at the national level is a call to action for our nation's governors. You've been back to D.C., I think, 3 times in recent months. How do you see your role in the current political environment?
Well, I see governors across the state as being the backstop for Trump administration policies. And let me just give you an example, and that's health care. I believe very strongly that healthcare is fundamental and foundational. And I know from the families that I've talked to, the physicians that I've met, the hospitals I've toured around the state, that the Affordable Care Act has been a really good thing for Oregon. Over 400,000 struggling Oregonians now have access to health care. To rip out the rug from underneath these Oregonians in order to pass a tax break for wealthy Americans seems absolutely absurd. And I know that a number of my governors, both Republican and Democrat, agree with me. I just spoke with a Republican governor this morning. He is saying no, the health plan expansion has been really good for us. And in addition, we talked about the fact that it's been a great job creator, particularly in our rural communities. We know through research that the Affordable Care Act has created over 23,000 jobs in Oregon. If you repeal the Affordable Care Act, we will lose at least 23,000 jobs and much more.
I'm told that you've had really good access to a lot of the Trump administration cabinet secretaries. Does that surprise you?
No, I actually found, and this is only my 3rd year as governor now, I had obviously good access to cabinet secretaries in the Obama administration, but I've also been very pleased to have good access to Trump administration secretaries. I've met with Secretary Price regarding health care. I met with Secretary Elaine Chao regarding infrastructure investments in roads and bridges and ports. Met with a number of folks to tell the Oregon story about the success we've seen on the ground.
Do you get the feeling that they're listening to Oregon's concerns and that you'll see any action?
I did have a conversation with one of the secretaries about my concern about the immigration policies and how not only is it impacting families across the state, creating fear, chaos, but it's also impacting the economy. And certainly this secretary understood my concerns. He is a farmer and was very concerned about the impact in the agricultural communities on these immigration policies.
On the subject of immigration, Oregon is a sanctuary state. It has been for decades. The U.S. House has approved a bill to strip federal dollars from sanctuary cities and states that shield residents from federal immigration authorities. Also, Attorney General Jeff Sessions is threatening a crackdown. Do you think Oregon is on solid ground on resisting cooperation with federal immigration officers?
Yes, we are, because we are following both state and federal law. So the executive order that I signed, built on the work of a 1987 legislature, signed into law a bill that would prohibit law enforcement agencies from singling out immigrants or refugees by virtue of their status and treating them as criminals. My executive order applied that to state employees as well, and also prohibit us from creating a Muslim registry ban in the state of Oregon. I think that's critically important and well within the confines of federal law. I want to send a message to Oregonians that Oregon is a welcoming and inclusive state, that we are a state that has a very rich tapestry of many diverse cultures. And it's these diverse cultures that have made Oregon the unique and special place that it is. And I want our families to feel safe and comfortable here.
You know, a lot of Oregonians, though, do support the federal immigration policy. Do you hear from them? How do you respond to them?
Well, I think I certainly do hear from Oregonians who feel strongly about this issue. what I want to make very clear is that we are a state of immigrants. With the exception of folks who are Native American, we all immigrated here. And I want to make sure that we create thriving communities across the state. And by making sure that families are safe, are not separated, that can continue to participate in our economy, whether it's picking cherries or making silicon chips, we want this diverse communities to be here and thrive.
We only have about 2 minutes left, but I want to touch on the environment because I know that's really important to you, particularly in light of President Trump withdrawing the United States from the Paris Climate Accord, and you've joined a climate alliance. You've really stepped up your efforts in that area. What can states really do without federal support?
Well, we can do a lot of things, and what I think is most important, I traveled to California a couple of weeks ago and met with my fellow governors, Governor Brown of California and Governor Inslee of Washington, but most importantly met with the president of the Paris Accords, the Prime Minister of Fiji. And what he said by us stepping up and saying we are going to work hard to achieve the goals of the Paris Accord agreements, that it gives people around the world hope that we will be able to accomplish these goals.
And I understand you're going to go to Bonn, Germany for a climate summit. What do you hope to accomplish there?
Two things. I want to make sure that we're sharing the great work we're doing here with other jurisdictions, whether it's cities or countries around the world. But I also want to learn best practices and bring those home to Oregon about what we can do better to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and conserve energy.
That brings me back home here to the Clean Air Initiative defeat that you suffered here at the legislature. I heard it was a big defeat for you, the Cleaner Air Oregon, that would have funded that kind of in light of the toxic air pollution crisis we saw in Portland. How did you feel about that defeat? What happens next?
Well, we are working with the business community. I am confident that we will continue to move forward. This is the first time ever that Oregon has tied together regulations around toxic air emissions and public health. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer, and we're going to proceed forward. We will continue to work closely with the business community, the environmental community, and the science community to make sure that we have cleaner air in Oregon and that Oregonians can be safe in their work environment.
And just a few seconds left, I wanted to ask you about the diesel pollution too, because that's important to a lot of people, especially in Multnomah County where levels are really high. That got stripped down out of the bill that finally passed. Can you tell us just briefly, what can you do next? You talk about cleaner air. We really need it.
Yes. What I was encouraged, this is how we fund. We got over $68 million in settlement from Volkswagen, and we will be using a portion of the proceeds to move from dirty diesel to clean diesel in buses. Still more work to be done. That's why this conversation is going to continue in February.
Thank you to Governor Kate Brown for joining us this week, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk.